So, Dharma friends, yesterday we spoke about the generation stage, the visualization of the deity, which consists of three aspects: clarity, purity, and stability. And so when you practice the deity, when you visualize the deity with eyes closed, then the deity naturally appears in your mind. So yesterday here in the text we said, visualize the deity clearly by having it appear as would a rainbow in the sky. So we have mentioned that the Sambhogakaya and the rainbow have a very great connection, strong connection. And we have said that the outer world, the universe, consists of the 5 elements, which by nature are the 5 mothers, female Buddhas. And then within the minds of sentient beings, there are the 5 afflictive emotions, which are by nature the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, the male Buddhas. So in this way, the universe and beings are the union of the Yapa and the Yum, but not necessarily in this kind of union as it is sometimes depicted, but in the sense of being a union of clarity and emptiness, which is the nature of one's own mind. Also, the clarity aspect is the Yap or the male, and the emptiness aspect is the Yum or the female. Or also bliss and emptiness, where the bliss aspect is the male, and again the emptiness aspect is the female. And that is the nature of all the Yap Yum deities on the ultimate level. Ultimately, they represent clarity and emptiness, the Yap and the Yum. And so then when you look into the nature of the deity, an example of the deity nature is a rainbow. A rainbow appears clearly in the sky, and it can be seen clearly. It has brilliant colors and the radiance, it's there in the sky, you can see it. That's the clarity of the rainbow. But then if you want to grasp it, to touch it, you can't, because it is also empty of self-nature. So it is really just like that. And actually the entire universe and all sentient beings are the natural manifestation or projection of the mind. This is how the universe comes into being. Samsara and nirvana come into being. So the form of the deity is an illusory, pure form. There is 2 kinds of illusory form. There is the pure and the impure illusory form. So who has an impure illusory form? That would be us, our ordinary body, consisting of the elements, as we mentioned yesterday in Marpa's quote. And also Sakya Pandita said something similar. He said that it is a vessel, the body is a vessel of an ocean of suffering, containing an ocean of suffering, and that it is the true enemy to the mind, of the mind. So our real enemy basically is our body, because the body needs all kinds of things. Everything we need because of the body, due to the 6 kind of sensations that arise, 6 sense consciousnesses. We want to experience pleasure, and we do not want to experience pain. We have an aversion against pain. So we are attached to the pleasant experience of the 6 senses. And this is also why we offer the 6 senses to the deity. Is it because the deity wants to have these offerings? That's not why. We make these offerings to the deity in order to diminish our own attachment to these sense objects. So for example, if you're eating food, then the food gets into your stomach, it fills your stomach. If you give your food to somebody else, it will not fill your stomach. So it's just like that. If you give away things, you're self-grasping, it will not fill you. And so that is why we make offerings to the higher beings, and we practice generosity towards sentient beings. That's the only purpose of giving away. Because then when we give away, the self-grasping goes away, the clinging goes away. So the reason we make offerings is so that we do not become attached, and we do not reinforce those habitual imprints of the six senses. And so then also ideally we give away with an altruistic mind. Then it becomes a cause of attaining awakening. Self-grasping is the cause of samsara. So anyways, in terms of the deity, in brief, the essence of the deity is clarity and emptiness. And then outer example of that is, for example, a rainbow. So it is just like a rainbow in the sky. So when you visualize the deity, you close your eyes and you cultivate the three kinds of faith, which is also necessary. So you cultivate a clear faith, a longing faith, and a trusting faith. And then you close your eyes and the deity appears in your mind, just like it is in the image that you have. And it is not just any kind of image, but you enter this image with great faith. And that's why the image also is very beautiful. The deity appears very beautiful, because if it is very beautiful, then the mind, it immediately arises in the mind. Because there is some kind of, you're attracted to it. There's some kind of a subtle kind of attachment. You're attracted to it. So the mind becomes like a camera. So you look at the image, and then a picture is taken, which then appears in your mind. In this way, by looking at something with your eyes, the mind opens up. So this is how form, and it's called form and name, or the form and the meaning connect to each other. And in this way, again and again, the deity will appear in your mind. Now, in a worldly sense, of course, when we become attached, then many faults come from that. But here, it is not that kind of attachment, because the deity is not such an object of attachment. That is why in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it is said, when encountering objects that please you, though they seem beautiful like rainbows in summertime, do not regard them as real and let go of clinging attachment. So there is nothing to be attached to when you see the form of the deity. So this is how it needs to be understood. And so when a deity appears in your mind with its color and form, then remember the deity's enlightened qualities, such as the omniscient mind and the loving compassion and the power to grant protection. The deity possesses inconceivable qualities, also possesses the 10 powers and so forth. So it possesses all of these actual qualities, and yet it does not possess any substantial inherent existence. So its nature is still empty. And that is why it is referred to as the pure illusory body. So recognize these qualities of the deity when it appears in your mind. So it clearly appears, but like a rainbow, you cannot grasp at it. And when you close your eyes, in the beginning there is kind of an approximate, a vague appearance of the deity, just the deity's color may arise. And then again, it disappears. Again, the appearance of the deity is again destroyed by thoughts arising. But actually, the deity is still there. It is just that your thoughts make your mind turn away from it. But the deity is without arising and decline. It is always actually there. So what appears is the actual deity. And when you think of the deity as just like a rainbow in the sky, then you will really develop trust in the deity. So a rainbow in the sky is the the pure essence of the 5 elements, the light of the 5 elements. And then the more coarse 4 elements are earth, rocks, wood, and so on. The elements, water and fire and so forth, are naturally empty. Even though they actually appear, for example, water, there's water, but water also is empty. It just disperses into space, or earth consists of many atomic particles where we cannot find the smallest particle. So it becomes emptiness the more we look into it, and we look into it again and again. So this is how you develop trust in the deity, by reflecting in this way. So you can see the form of the deity, that's the clarity aspect, but then there is nothing to be attached to. There's no real substance to be attached to. And that is the emptiness aspect. So that is a very important point to reflect upon. Reflect upon the nature of the deity as just like a rainbow. And this is actually also how it is explained in the Buddha's teachings. And this is how we gain certainty. So when you reflect in this way, then you really come to a point where you feel that this is really how it is. And then also your trust in the Buddha's teachings will increase. And you will, when you hear something that the Buddha said, you will feel, I take refuge in the Buddha's teachings. It must be true, because the Buddha had said that. So that happens after you have gained certainty in that yourselves through your own reflection. So in this way, I also have ascertained this point myself through reflecting in this way. And also other lamas or other masters have ascertained it in this way. So you gain certainty that this is what it is. And that is really important, that you gain this certainty. And you gain this certainty now here in the generation stage by again and again reflecting on a point that the appearance of the deity is like the natural light of a rainbow in the sky. And what appears in your mind is the actual deity. So first, when you close your eyes and you think of the deity, then there's this approximate vague image that appears. And at that, when you have gained this certainty, you will have no more doubts as to whether or not this image in your mind is the actual deity. And you know that this is the actual deity. What we call a deity is just that. It appears in the mind in just this way. And when you recognize that, and then joy and happiness and trust arise. What has to arise, what also arises are specifically 2 kinds of faith: the trusting faith and the clear faith, which recognizes the qualities of the deity. So these 2 kinds of faith then will arise.
Right.
So it also says, without parting from the quintessence of practice. So that is actually also very meaningful, these words. What this refers to is the view. The view is one where one must not grasp at anything. One should not grasp at the true substantial existence or the lack of existence. So no grasping whatsoever. That is the view of the middle way. And so then from within that state, the deity naturally appears. So when you really reflect upon that, then whatever thought arises in the mind will instantly be dispersed, just like a wave on water. So you're resting within the view of clarity and emptiness. the quintessence is to sustain such mindfulness, and within that state that does not engage in conceptualization, the deity that naturally appears. So therefore, Dzogchen said in the beginning, he said that the preliminary practices are more profound to me than the main part practices. Because some people really try very hard to practice the generation stage. But the preliminary to that must be the four immeasurables. You're establishing a foundation with immeasurable love, and then you practice until you have cultivated immeasurable equanimity. And then once you have really accomplished those four immeasurables, then from within that state, you practice the deity, ideally. And so therefore, in the beginning of our practices, it begins with purifying all into emptiness. The Om Svabhava mantra, or in the new tantric system, the Shunyata Jnana, or the Yoga Shuddha and so on mantras. So all phenomena become empty, and oneself becomes empty. And then the deity arises from within such a state of emptiness. So then you might think that, is it that I have to think that like everything, like each and everything has become empty? So the main thing that has to become empty is this sense of me, the sense of I. It is this body, this kind of heap of particles, this compound that we identify with the self. This sense of self and me has to become empty, because when that becomes empty, then everything else, the other, also naturally become empty. So mainly this concept of I, me, has to become empty. And for that sake, for that reason, bodhicitta is most important. And for that, immeasurable love is most important. And when immeasurable love arises, then naturally the self will not be there. And then if you never separate from that, then the mind becomes very clear. So therefore now when we purify into emptiness, everything into emptiness, it really begins with the four immeasurables. And starting from the four immeasurables until one comes to the actual state of emptiness, it goes in stages like that, until you realize the actual nature of the mind. So it is from within that state that the quintessence of practice that we practice, meditate on the deity. So this is what it means to remain inseparable from the view while practicing the deity, while practicing the generation stage. So otherwise, if we practice the generation stage and we visualize the deity, and without such a view, then from such practice, many faults can arise. And that is a very, very important point. And so when you practice the deity, this is the basis, and then you must have a good image of the deity, like a tanka and so on, and then engage in practice without grasping, holding the view that is free from grasping. And then if you meditate within that state, then the deity will naturally arise. So the inner mind space must be merged with the outer space. And when you practice the deity, so you close your eyes and you think nothing whatsoever, and the mind becomes completely empty. There is no thought whatsoever in the mind. And so you have your eyes closed, and then all kinds of thoughts may arise, which are also like rainbows appearing, is appearance. And so then when you within that state, instead of thinking, you visualize the deity. So sometimes you visualize the form of the deity very small and sometimes very large, filling up the entire space, the entire outer empty space, which have merged with the inner mind space. So sometimes smaller, sometimes larger. Like in this application to Chenrezig, the 11th phase Chenrezig, filling up all reaches of space. Or you can also sometimes imagine how all the stars in the sky are the eyes of Chenrezig. So that is actually a very important point. In this way, you always habituate at all times on an ongoing basis. So regarding the quintessence of practice, the quintessence of practice, one of the quintessences of practice is emptiness. So actually, when you sustain such an awareness continuously, there is not even a need to purify anything into emptiness. Lord Jigten Sungen mentioned two ways of practicing the deity. According to the new tantric system, there are 4 kinds of generation stage. And within those 4, one is the instantaneous, miraculous visualization, where one visualizes the deity appears in just an instant. And so Jigten Sungen has said that this is a very profound point. The instantaneous visualization, the instantaneous arising is a very profound point for 2 kinds of individuals. Those who have attained the ultimate realization of the view, and then the very beginners, the very new practitioners. So that's also a very important point, because it's actually a very convenient way, an easy way to practice the deity when it arises in just an instant. So in terms of the quintessence of practice, there is 2 main quintessences of practice. And so one is that the practice arises, the quintessence is the altruistic mind. That is, you engage in practice for the benefit of sentient beings. Out of immeasurable love, you visualize the deity. So in this way, the deity naturally arises. So if you, on the other hand, think that I am practicing the deity, then it is just like an ice block. And an ice block cannot help an ice block melt. So most important is to cultivate the relative bodhicitta, practicing the deity from within a state of immeasurable love, of wanting to benefit all sentient beings. So from within that state of mind, in an instant, then transforms into the seed syllable of the deity, the syllable Shri, in an instant, just like a fish leaping from water. So that is the instantaneous visualization as explained by Jigten Sungen. So it is meant, again, for those who have reached the highest points of practice and for very beginning practitioners. For both of them, the instantaneous visualization is said to be very profound. So you bring to mind the deity in an instant, and then the deity actually that appears is the actual deity when it appears out of the state of immeasurable love, because the mind of all the deities is great compassion. And when that is present in your own mind, then your mind is the same as the deity. So then that leads to there's 3 aspects to generation stage: the clarity, then there's the purity, and then there's stability. And when we reflect on stability, then you are ascertaining as to, am I not the deity? Am I really the deity or not? And that's actually the most important of those 3 aspects of deity practice. When you meditate on the deity, you should gain a certainty in really being the deity, gain a confidence of actually being the deity. And so how can you gain this confidence? First of all, you are inseparable from the deity on the level of Buddha nature. The mind that is free of all self-grasping is the actual mind of the deity. And then secondly, all the deities possess bodhicitta. So if I cultivate a wish to benefit sentient beings, then I am not grasping at a self. So therefore, I really am the actual deity. There's really no difference. So if you just never separate from love and compassion, then you really are the deity. So this divine pride or confidence of being the deity, that is most important, this certainty of I am the deity. And so this stability eventually arises if you practice in this way. So therefore, this is a very important point. So then there are many new practitioners, and for them there are many books, Buddhist books that explain that very clearly, how the deity appears, the form and the color and so on, the implements. But of all these aspects, what's most important is the divine pride of really being the deity. So without thinking anything, you just cultivate a wish to benefit sentient beings, and then in an instant think of the deity, such as Chenrezig. And it is okay if the appearance of the deity is not so clear. What's more important is to have this confidence of actually being the deity. This is very important. It says, and then visualize the Yidam deity clearly. So there are many deities, and mainly you should practice whichever deity you have the greatest faith in and that you're mostly familiar with. So you visualize that deity. But the outer appearance of the deity, the form of the deity, is just like clothing. But the inner mind is the same. It is a mind of love. So regarding the quintessence of this practice, in terms of the view, there is much to be said, but really the quintessence is love. And that is something everyone can understand. So if you never separate from the wish to benefit sentient beings, that is the mind of the deity. Then even if you practice 100 deities, the mind is the same. It is this union of emptiness and compassion. And it is also that which leads to the realization of emptiness. So if relative bodhicitta or immeasurable love is something that everyone can understand, so this is the quintessence of practice. And if you never separate from that, that is sufficient. And that's the most important point to understand. The most important point to understand is that the outer appearance of the implements and the color and so on of the deity is just like the clothes of the deity. But the inner mind is always one and the same. And so that's very important to understand. And so also another quintessential point of deity practice is that there is a danger that if we miss this point, that we practice, what we accomplish is the ordinary deity. So if one practices the deity in an ordinary way and recites the mantra in an ordinary way, then it is said one becomes like a demon with wings. So then in the bardo, basically, one may assume the form of the deity, but really be like a sky hovering, hungry spirit that goes after the life force of sentient beings. So there's a danger that this will happen. For example, it is when we practice Yamantaka or Vajrakilaya with this intention of this is necessary to defeat an enemy, and so therefore we need a specific separate deity for that. So there's this danger that if when you see the deity in this separate way, just like different people, then the deity becomes ordinary. And then when you practice that deity with an intention that comes from, is driven by anger and jealousy towards others, then the result will not be any different than that. Actually, the result that should be attained, that we want to attain, is we want to become free from suffering, and we want to attain the state of enlightenment. And the state of enlightenment is the state where all dualistic grasping of self and other is cleared away, and we attain a state of great bliss that is free from all suffering. And so for this sake, we are actually engaging in practice. But if, on the other hand, you engage in deity yoga practice in order to achieve some benefit in this life and in order to harm others with a motivation of anger and jealousy and so on, then the deity practice will become just another cause of samsara. So this is what happens when you practice the generation stage without having the correct view. And when you practice it with an ordinary intention of anger and jealousy, then the deity becomes, there's a danger that the deity becomes just ordinary. So this is also a point that's important to understand here. For example, we practice the wrathful deities, and it seems that the wrathful deities, because they're wrathful, they have anger, because there's words like kill them and slay them and destroy their flesh and destroy their hearts and so on. So that is said, but what does it actually mean? In the Vajrayana practice, for example, it is said that out of great compassion for sentient beings, hardy ones are destroyed with wrath, or those malevolent ones. But what is really the malevolent one? What is like an evil being like that? So it is a being whom in previous lives has made corrupt aspirations, has accumulated negative karma, and then various conditions come together that now in this world they appear as those who cause destruction, who cause pain and illness to others, or who cast spells and curses and so forth. So they cause harm due to these conditions with an angry mind or a jealous mind. So these three afflictive emotions of attachment, hatred, and ignorance, they are related to our body parts. Ignorance abides in flesh, attachment abides in blood, and hatred abides in the bones. These are the three causes of birth in samsara. And these need to be destroyed in those wrathful practices. Because when they are destroyed, then when they are not present in the mind of sentient beings, then the mind is completely pure. And therefore, primordially, sentient beings are actually Buddhas. So we engage in these practices in order to liberate them from these very strong afflictive emotions. There are some sentient beings who have accumulated very thick layers of such negativity, of these afflictions. They are very powerful in their minds. And in those wrathful practices, we bring those to mind, and then these are offered as the aggregates of flesh, blood, and bone. So then we offer attachment, aversion, and ignorance in the form of flesh, blood, and bone to the deity. And so actually, such offering, such destruction of afflictive emotions becomes just like undergoing a surgery. It purifies the consciousness, and it places bodhicitta into the mind of the consciousness, so that ultimately those beings attain the state of Buddhahood. so that they become free from attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So if there's anything to be angry at, then it is the three poisons, the afflictive emotions of all sentient beings in the three realms of samsara. And that is the meaning of these wrathful words. So, for example, there is terms like those enemies and obstructors and harm doers, they are destroyed. But who is the actual enemy and obstructor and harm doer? All harm is caused by hatred and jealousy and so forth. So this is why they harm. And then what about your own mind? In my own mind, there is self-grasping. And if I act out on that with an afflicted mind, it will ripen in a similar way as for those other beings. So therefore, it doesn't really matter so much what the other person does. Look at your own mind. And if your own mind is pure, you're a good person. But when the mind becomes impure and you have evil thoughts, then you become a bad person. In the Bodhicharyavatara, it says that people destroy their happiness just like it would be like it was their greatest enemy. So we hurt others with hatred, and then again in future lives, it's like an ever-turning wheel, and a wheel that's turning endlessly. We kill them now, then they kill us back, and so forth. It goes around in circles, and in this way, karma proliferates endlessly. And these wrathful activities bring a stop to such evil karma and the three poisons. And it is brought to an end by transforming the three poisons into flesh, blood, and bones, which is then made a feast offering. It is offered to the deity, and thereby the consciousness becomes purified, becomes free of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So when we practice the wrathful deity, this is how we need to understand the essence of this practice. We practice the wrathful deity in order to establish sentient beings in a state of awakening. So that's also very important. So it says then, so you visualize them, the various attributes clearly as they would in a mirror, like a reflection in the mirror. So the outer example is a mirror. The outer, like in a mirror, an outer reflection appears. And the mind is just like that. The mind is just like a mirror. When you look at an image and then you close your eyes, then like in a mirror, that image is reflected. It appears. You can see it, but you cannot grasp it. So when you close your eyes and you visualize the deity, it appears in your mind just like a reflection in a mirror. And there is no difference between a mirror and space. So it is not just like a mirror, like an actual mirror. It is just an outer example. But the mind is very similar to that. So you close your eyes and visualize the deity. And it is said then you visualize, it says here, the various attributes clearly, the ornaments and the attributes clearly. And until you gain stability. So in order to gain stability in the generation stage practice, we have to also reflect upon the pure meaning of each of the deity's elements, like the ornaments and the color and so forth, because they each represent a certain enlightened quality in the deity's mind. So normally, when we are in a confused state, then even the smallest samsaric activity places an imprint in the mind. Each and every little thing that we do places a karmic imprint into the mind. And now when we practice the deity, then this imprint is placed into the mind. So when you visualize the deity, you look at an image of the deity, and then, for example, if you have a peaceful deity, then you gradually visualize from, for example, top to bottom. So you start with the crown ornament, and you reflect upon its pure meaning. For example, the crown ornament, the fivefold crown ornament, is a sign of the five Dhyani Buddhas, the Buddha families, and that is a sign of having ripened the five afflictive emotions into the five wisdoms. Also, empowerments and blessings are a method to transform the five afflictive emotions into the nature of the five Buddha families, or a method to transform self-grasping into altruism. According to the Pratimoksha, or individual liberation, the five afflictive emotions are transformed into the 6 paramitas. And according to the secret mantra, they are transformed into the 5 wisdoms. So the fivefold crown ornament, therefore, is a sign of the 5 Buddha families and their consorts. So then you go through each of those elements of the deities, just like you are painting a picture with your mind, as you reflect upon the pure meaning of the deity's appearance. So then, if you continue to practice in this way, the actual deity will appear clearly in the mind. And at some point, it will never leave your mind. You never forget about the deity, but you forget about your ordinary body. And the deity is always in your mind, just like the mother of a child. They're always together. You never forget about the deity. So if you have habituated to it, then the image, as it appears in a tanka or a statue, will naturally, instantly appear in your mind. And so what appears in your mind is the actual deity. So when the deity appears, it appears in your mind, a mind that is free of all dualistic grasping. There is no thought of self and other. So don't think in terms of me and the deity when you visualize the deity. You just remain within a state of meditation, and within that state, the mind becomes non-dual naturally. And then from within that, the deity arises. We do sometimes speak about the self-visualization and the front visualization. And there is a dualistic notion in there, which was also taught by the Buddha. And the Buddha taught according to the different capacities of sentient beings. But actually, it is not really necessary to divide it in this way. But everything is the deity. The outer 5 elements are the deity. And the inner mind is one with the deity. It is just like a tree and its branches. The ground of mind is a single one, only temporarily due to grasping at self and other, the various phenomena of samsara and nirvana manifest, just like the branches of it on the tree. But actually, you ideally practice the inseparable union of the self and the front visualization. So visualize clearly, although it all appears clearly, it lacks any inherent nature like the moon reflected in water. So this is similar to the example of the mirror. So they all show that what appears clearly, but yet it lacks any inherent nature. And the example, for example, is that of a rainbow. So there should be no grasping at the true, substantial, or concrete existence of the appearance. And then it says, Vajradhara said that the 2 stages of generation and completion abiding equally is the Buddha's teaching. So the union of generation and completion is the Buddha's teaching. The union of generation and completion is the union of clarity and emptiness. Clarity is the appearance of phenomena. The outer world is the immeasurable palace, and the inner sentient beings are the dakas and dakinis. In the secret mantra tradition of the Nyingma, for example, it is referred to as pure sights, sounds, and thoughts. Or it is said that all appearances are the deity, all sounds are the mantra, and all thoughts, all mental arising is the play of primordial wisdom. You remain without grasping so to practice the union of generation and completion, you visualize while remaining without any grasping at the substantial existence of what appears. So the deity appears clearly and yet lacks any inherent nature. The clarity aspect is the generation stage. And that is the various phenomena that appear clearly, vividly appear in the mind. So slowly you visualize each of those parts. And the empty aspect that lacks inherent nature is to not grasp at the true existence of appearance. So this union of generation and completion is said to be the Buddha's teaching. And then it says, thus the union of generation and completion is the root of secret mantra practice. So the union of generation and completion, in essence, is the union of appearance and emptiness. So the union of generation and completion, in the generation stage, the deity appears with clarity when you close your eyes. But then when you look at the essence of what appears, it cannot be grasped. It is empty. So there's nothing substantial to grasp at. So it is a union of clarity and emptiness, as you mentioned before. Or it is like a rainbow appearing in the sky that is clear and empty. That rainbow appears clearly, but when you know its essence, its nature, you see that it cannot be grasped. So the rainbow is an example of this union of appearance and emptiness. So clarity is when all various thoughts arise in the mind, and then you engage in action, either in the Dharma or in the world. There is a clear consciousness that engages in these activities and has those thoughts. That's the clarity. But then when you look at the nature of this knowing awareness, it becomes empty like space. If you do not know the nature of the mind, then you will not recognize this empty nature. And when you do not recognize the empty nature of these appearances in your mind, then that creates samsara. That leads to the solidified grasping at the substantial existence of various appearances. So there's this quote again by Jigten Sumgön, karma, cause, and effect is the natural expression of moment-to-moment thoughts. So moment to moment, the most subtle thought leads, or karma leads to an appearance of any kind of life form. It makes the mind freeze into ice. So in order to free sentient beings from that, in order to free ourselves from that, we engage in practice. So first, the outer appearances, the appearance aspect is the generation stage. So then when you meditate and you rest in the natural state, there should be no thought of either being empty or not empty, or clear or not clear. You just naturally abide within the nature of the mind, and that itself then becomes this union. So that means you can see phenomena, and according to the secret mantra, we can also partake of sense objects, but without attachment, without any clinging to their true existence at all. Therefore, in the Samantha Bhadra prayer, it says, do not invite attachment, do not accept attachment to desire, nor reject attachment to desire. Abide like space. Then, according to the secret mantra, any sense object can be enjoyed. So this is the union of generation and completion, and it is the root of secret mantra practice, and therefore it is very important. Also yesterday we mentioned that Thich Nhat Hanh said that I am a yogin who has realized that my parents, the Yidam and the 6 classes of sentient beings, are all one. So in this way you're transforming sentient beings into Yidams. And in this way, millions of sentient beings, one by one, are established in the state of enlightenment. So transforming beings into sentient beings means that all sentient beings have been our parents, and all parents, all sentient beings, the Yidam, all possess Buddha nature. So when the afflictive emotions, the 5 afflictive emotions, become purified, then on the basis, sentient beings really are the deity. They are primordially pure, or they are only temporarily obscured. So if you understand that the obscuration is just temporary, then it actually becomes quite easy. Sometimes when we practice this effort-bound compassion, it seems very difficult and very heavy. But actually, because it is just a temporary, fleeting obscuration, sentient beings can easily become liberated, because in the end, ultimately, there are no real sentient beings. So the secret mantra is referred to a secret because ordinary beings do not understand its meaning. They cannot understand it. If one doesn't practice the secret mantra, one cannot really understand its meaning. But if one practices it, then one gains realization. So it is not secret because it has been intentionally hidden or kept secret. It is naturally secret in that it is difficult to realize. But whoever engages in practice can realize its meaning.